insurance rise comes into effect.
Yeah, it will rise by 1.25% at a time when households are already struggling with inflation at the highest level in 30 years and skyrocketing household bills.
It's a manifesto-breaking move for the Conservatives, which brings the tax burden to a 70-year high. It will go ahead despite pressure from Tory benches for it to be scrapped.
Well, Boris Johnson has said the rise would fund the so-called health and social care levy from next year, fuelling the biggest catch-up programme in the NHS's history.
So currently the number of people waiting for elective care in England alone is at 6 million. That's up from 4.4 million before the pandemic.
Well, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid last night said that the money raised from National Insurance will make sure everyone can get the care and treatment they need.
OK, so how will that work? What will it mean for you, our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, here to answer your questions on all of that. Liam, good morning to you. The Health Secretary says this is going to solve all the problems. A lot of problems to solve, will it?
Morning to both of you. What's happening today is National Insurance is going up by 1.25 percentage points for both workers and for firms. But Rishi Sunak would say, and he's got a point, that as well as putting up the rate of National Insurance, he's also increased in his spring statement at the end of last month the threshold where you start paying National Insurance. He's raised that by £3,000. So what that means when you net those two effects out, roughly speaking, is that if you earn above £38,000 a year in total, you'll pay more. If you earn below £38,000 a year in total, you'll pay less, just on those national insurance changes. At the same time, there are other tax changes happening today. If you run a restaurant, a pub, a cafe, you'll know this, that up until now, in recent months, during the pandemic and the aftermath, the government allowed you to charge just 12.5% VAT in order to keep your prices down and improve your cash flow. From today, that goes up to 20%, which is the regular rate of VAT across the rest of the economy. So it's the end of those emergency pandemic measures on VAT. But as you rightly say, Eamonn, for a lot of people, this feels like a lot of new taxes coming in. We've got council tax rises coming in again today, as well as those heating bill rises last week. For many, the cost of living squeeze is getting too tight. And Sajid Javid says this money is needed to pay for the National Health Service, to pay for social care. If that's the case, I would ask the Home Secretary and former Chancellor, which is what he is, why is Rishi Sunak saying taxes are going to go down in 2023, 2024, just before an election? There's a lot of gimmickry going on here, far too much for some people's taste. It looks a bit out of touch and a bit too clever.
Liam, the Prime Minister defending it, saying this is a fair and responsible thing to do, arguing that, the Chancellor has now tinkered with the thresholds, which means that those with the broadest shoulders will be taking the brunt of this tax. But when you look at this in detail, is that true, or is it really only the very, very poorest who will now no longer be affected by it, but the rest of us, plenty of people, will be effectively termed the working poor as a result of this?
No, as I said, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and I back their calculations, they'll be pleased to know, a very influential, respected body. They've said when you combine the combination of the threshold increase, which Rishi Sunak unveiled on the day of the spring statement last week, with the rise in the headline rate of national insurance for workers, if you earn more than 38 grand, you'll pay more. If you earn less than 38 grand, which is, quite a decent wage. The average wage in this country is about £31,000 a year. Then you'll pay less if you earn less than £38,000. Look, for the really less well off and those that aren't working, I think that's where Rishi Sunak really dropped the ball. And I would be pressing Sajid Javid on this point, that benefits are only going to go up by 3.1% as of today across the board. And inflation officially is forecast to be 7.4, getting on for 8% or even more this year. So these benefit rises are well below the rate of inflation, because we traditionally put up benefits in the spring by the rate of inflation the previous September, which was just 3.1%. For me, that was the most politically risky part of the spring statement and the whole package that's coming in today. You got tax rises, you got big inflation numbers, cost of living rises coming through, and yet benefits for the poorest in society, the most vulnerable households, those that aren't working, so they don't pay national insurance anyway, those benefits are going up by much, much less than the rate of inflation. I think that's politically very risky for the Tories, particularly in the sort of red wall seats across the Northwest, the Northeast and the Midlands that they won at the last election, that they need to retain if they're going to hold on to power.
Yeah. Get that, Liam. I suppose the only way we can console ourselves is thinking if it reduces those horrendous waiting lists for people being treated for cancer and other sort of operations. I suppose that's the only consolation we can have. If it makes a difference, we'll be putting that to the Health Secretary at 8:45. Just while we've got you, Liam, I just want to speak to you about the situation at Manchester Airport this week. And you've got the Managing Director there, Karen Smart, resigning today with immediate effect. It seems to be chaos at this airport, and part of it is they can't recruit.
It's not only that they can't recruit, Eamonn, of course, it's because a lot of people are off work, with long COVID, in quotation marks. And I don't say that lightly. Charlie Cornish runs the Manchester Airport Group. It also runs the same organisation, Stansted Airport in London, obviously a huge airport, and East Midlands Airport. And he's called this the most challenging period in our 84-year history. Karen Smart's got a good reputation. She's been with Manchester Airport Group for 8 years. She's pretty much run Manchester Airport for the last 2 years. But there have been weeks and weeks of delays, not just delays, people missing their flights because they're not being processed because there isn't the staff to process them. So yes, there's a recruitment problem, but there's an even bigger problem of not being able to get existing staff to come to work because of ongoing pandemic issues. Some people would say, with all respect, that they're being overstated. If you look at the number of cases of COVID across the UK, it's falling. If you look at the number of people in intensive care with COVID, it's very, very low. Of course, it's still a nasty virus. Of course, people have died, are dying and will die from it. But very, very few people of working age, if I say so with all respect, though some, of course, have pre-existing conditions. Now, I'm not saying nobody should be isolating if they have COVID, shouldn't be isolating if they have COVID and they feel bad, but there's no longer a legal requirement to do so. So increasingly employers are going to think you should be at work.
OK, Liam, thank you for being at work today. Liam with his own show from 1 p.m. Thank you very much indeed.